Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to cross the Øresund once again and go over to Copenhagen in Denmark, and we're going to revisit a brewery who I personally rate very highly. I've had some excellent beers from these guys over the last couple of years. So for this one then we are going to go to Gørløse, which is just to the north of the main central part of Copenhagen, and we're having a look at another beer from Gamma Brewing Company. This must be review number 6 or 7 or so that I've done from these guys. But this brewery are mainly known for their New England hazy type IPAs, but this time we're having a look at the dark end of the spectrum. This beer is called the Feigned Fervor. It comes in at 12% ABV, an Imperial Stout with vanilla, almonds and brown sugar added to the brew. So this one I think will be a bit of a monster. The last beers that I've reviewed from these guys, it was the Atom, the Guap and the Green Gak, if I remember correctly, which were all IPAs. Before that I did review another stout from them though, that was called the World Eater, and I think that was the first ever Gamma beer that I reviewed for you on the channel. But before that I had actually filmed a review of Hop Sweat, but something happened to the video file and I was never able to publish it, unfortunately. But that was a very nice West Coast IPA, and that's a beer that I would love to re-review from these guys actually, because it really is very good. But as I say, a brewery in Denmark that are doing some very good stuff, along with Dry and Bitter. You know, these two breweries popped up around the same time, and if you get the chance to try some of their beers, I highly recommend that you do. They're starting to get their name out there a little bit more these days, but a very solid brewery when it comes to the IPAs, and you know, hopefully this stout kind of matches that as well. It's always interesting to try a different style from a brewery who are known for one particular type of beer. We found that with Treehouse when we were trying some of their stouts actually, and I know that Gamma are very good in this style as well, but definitely a Danish brewery that you want to check out if you get the chance. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one. I'm really curious to see what it has in store for us. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Gamma Brewing Company before. No doubt there will be some more at some point in the near future. I always try to bring a Gamma beer back over with me when I go to Copenhagen, because I love reviewing these ones. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, which is pretty regularly to be honest, which is the great thing about living in Skåne. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Gamma Brewing Company then. So Gamma Brewing Company was originally founded back in 2015 by 4 friends who were working around Copenhagen in various beer bars around the city. But they basically used to just sit and talk about how it would be cool to have their own brewery, and little did they know that they would eventually get onto that. But they've since taken in another co-owner, and so the team at the brewery are now 5 people. That's Jakob, Anders, Jesper, Koy and Nick, and they all had a little bit of home brewing experience. 2 of them had worked in Ølsnedkeren in Copenhagen, and they actually went on to purchase the former Stronzo brewery in Gørløse, which is what became Ølkollektivet. So those of you living in Denmark will probably know that name. Apparently they were invited to join Ølkollektivet. They got a good deal on a 20 hectolitre tank, and they started the brewery without any experience at all of running their own business. But it went very well for them. And they've expanded a good couple of times now. I think they've expanded 3 or 4 times since they started up the company, and they're producing somewhere in the region of 500 hectolitres of beer per year, and they're exporting over to England. I know we can get some of their beers in Scotland as well. I think I've seen them in some of the beer shops I follow in Ireland too, but you get them in Germany. Some of them make it over here to Sweden. I think some of them have made it to Norway as well, and I know that you can get them in the Netherlands as well. I know some of the Dutch beer tubers have been looking at some of these beers. But one of the co-owners of this brewery is also one of the co-owners of May and Ulsnedkeren in Aarhus as well. But Ull Collective, as you know, it's a collective brewing space. It's home to Ulsnedkeren, who do brew some beers there, of course, Gamma Brewing and Dry and Bitter, and they also used to brew the Bad Seed beers under contract before they got their own brewery, and I think Ghost Brewing and Rooster also used to brew there as well, but they've moved on to other places now. But yeah, as I say, this is a very, very well respected brewery. These guys have produced somewhere in the region of 70 beers as of February 2020 according to Untappd. I would suspect it's a little bit more than that though, because they are very prolific. They do seem to get 2 or 3 beers being released through Kiosk every month. So yeah, like I say, very well known for their hazy IPAs, and they put out, I think I've also had a black IPA from these guys at one point, I'm sure. But you know, very, very good brewery in my opinion, and I always I try to bring something back from Kiosk from Gamma every time I go over there. So if you're interested in Danish craft beers, Gamma Brewing is a very good place to start actually. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Gamma Brewing Company for the moment. That was all the information I was able to find on these guys. I did try to search around for some articles and things to update the notes a little bit, but it was a little bit difficult to find anything on them, to be honest. But yeah, a really good brewery this one, and one that I would highly recommend you check out. So if you want to learn more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to see details on all the different beers that they do. They mainly have their kind of core-ish beers listed on the website, but if you want to keep up to date with the more kind of crazy ones that they're releasing, I'd recommend that you follow one of their social media streams. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a look at this beer then. So as you can see, it's got this lovely artwork that you would normally associate with Gamma. I did actually keep my can for the Atom IPA because I really like that. You know, by trade I'm a spectroscopist. When it comes to my scientific side of things, of course, I was a spectroscopist in physics and chemistry, molecular astrophysics, astrochemistry was my speciality. So yeah, I really like the artwork on that one, but this one, again, is really very cool. That sort of minimalist Scandinavian type design, if you like. There you can see on the back, there is the Gamma Brewing Company symbol. A little bit like an oscilloscope, which I used to love to mess around with in the labs. But like I said to you, this one is an Imperial Stout coming in at 12% ABV, and it tells you on the back there's almonds, vanilla and brown sugar added into this one. So it will be a bit of a monster, this, but I'm sure I am going to enjoy this one. This is my Friday night review. So let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. A 440ml can. This is definitely a way to kind of round off your night, to be honest. But yeah, this is the only beer I'm drinking this evening. So yeah, as you can see then, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, we can get rid of the brewery notes now. As you can see and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this one has poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. If I shine the light through this one, it's black as night. There's no light coming through this one at all. This is just a dark beast of a beer. You can see there's a solid, I would say just under a half finger of a frothy, quite dark tan head on this one. That's fading away quite quickly to just be a very thin foamy layer. Quite a common feature of high alcohol beers, and they do tend to lose their heads a little bit more quickly, but overall it looks really nice and nothing overly surprising about this one in terms of its appearance. You can see there's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, but there's a few small ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But to be honest, the carbonation in this one does look quite calm really. There's not too much in the way of visible activity. So yeah, nothing surprising about this one in terms of its appearance. So let's have a little look at the aroma and see how we get on then. Oh, that smells really nice. It almost smells a little bit aniseedy or something. That's really unusual. So when I take this one in, straight away I get this a little bit of an almost aniseedy note out of this one. It's got a really smooth base, but just that licoricey aniseedy thing's just jumped out of the glass at me there. I didn't expect that from this one at all. But yeah, it really has a lot of licoricey aniseedy quality to this. I didn't quite expect that from this beer. So, Other than that though, you do get the almond notes out of this, and you can pick out the vanilla straight away. For me, the aroma has quite a bit of woody undertone to it, and that's kind of mixing in with this kind of aniseedy note. There is a good bit of chocolate to this, and it's I think around a 60-ish% cocoa. It's got a bit of a milky character to it as well, but that could be the vanilla that's giving you that sort of impression. But a lovely kind of woody undertone to the beer, some heavy kind of, as I say, 60% cocoa chocolate, maybe even a little bit of a higher chocolate than that as well. Some lovely brown sugary notes in there. As I say, the brown sugar was added in there, but it comes across as quite sweet, but also at the same time quite toasted. It doesn't give me the impression of it being really treacly or molassesy or anything like that. It really comes across as sweet but toasted. But yeah, good few woody undertones to this one. That licoricey aniseed note really seems to dominate throughout this one. I mean, could it be a little bit phenolic or something? But yeah, it's really interesting. I didn't expect that from this beer at all. You can pick out the vanilla like I was saying, but you can also you can really, it really is that sort of aniseedy licoricey thing, just really dominates the palate. Lovely woody undertones to this one, like I said. It just kind of builds in layers, as I say, the bit of woodiness underneath, some kind of sweeter, darker chocolate sitting on top of that, a bit of vanilla in there as well, some brown sugars, and then that licoricey aniseedy thing. That's really interesting. On the hoppy side of things, it's got a little bit of grassiness to it, but there is a little bit of earthiness in there as well, which is quite interesting. Yeah, a wee bit of earthiness. It's not that the hoppy side of this beer isn't too prominent, to be honest. I've got a feeling this might be a bit of a, it might be a lower IBU stout, this one. But I mean, I'll probably taste it and get proved wrong now that I've said that. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, this one, it's really got this kind of, it's got a big, what comes across as quite a phenolic quality to it. There is a little bit of a cakey element in there as well, actually. It reminds me a little bit of Christmas pudding, come to think of it. Some of the licoricey, aniseedy notes that you get out of this, it really does remind me a little bit of Christmas pudding. My dad used to love Christmas pudding and would always, we'd always give him that on his birthday as his birthday cake. And so, some of the elements in this beer really remind me of that. But on the fruity side of things, some nice black currants and blackberries in there. There's a bit of a darker kind of plummy note to this one. It's got a wee touch of a raisiny sharpness and also some kind of juicier figs in there, but it really does have a kind of medicinal phenolic type quality to it as well that you might expect of like Belgian dubels or quadrupels or something like that. Some of the fruity notes are really quite phenolic like that. So yeah, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it. This has got a really quite quirky and quite unusual aroma in my mind, so make sure that you spend a bit of time and enjoy that. That's always half the experience when it comes to craft beers and whiskies and sakes and stuff like that. But we're going to have a taste of this one now and see how we get on. We've waited long enough. This one is the Feigned Fervor, a 12% Imperial Stout with vanilla, almonds and brown sugar added to the brew from Gamma Brewing in Gorløse to the north of Copenhagen in Denmark. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål. It's really nice, actually. It's well balanced. This, it really has a bit of nice toasty element underneath it, and it's one of these stouts that starts off big and oily, but it does dry out to a good degree the further you go into the aftertaste. But at the same time, it's very, very smooth. I like that. It's quite unusual compared to some of the other stouts that I've had. Let's stick the last bit of it in there. It's my Friday night beer. Give me, I'm going to enjoy this. This is my last one of the night. My only beer of the night, I should say, as well. But yeah, this is lovely. Big thumbs up to Gamma Brewing once again. Let's try and break the flavour of this down a little bit though. So when you take this beer in, it comes in as being quite fruity and very sweet. But like I say, it just dries out the further you go into the palate, or into the aftertaste I should say. So yeah, with this beer then, you can feel a little bit of that roasty toasty black malt. That kind of forms the backbone of the beer, but on top of that, you get the other things just kind of smoothing it out a little bit. And that's not to say, as I said, it dries out the further you go into the palate, particularly towards the front of the tongue. But on top of that, if you go to the back of the palate, you get some big dark chocolatey notes out of this one, like a sort of 80% kind of cocoa chocolate. But as you move further forward on the palate with this beer, the chocolate kind of brightens up a little bit. If you go to the very centre of the tongue as well, that's where you get some of the brown sugary notes out of this beer. It is a little bit more like a kind of treacly molasses sort of thing. As I said, in the aroma, it actually came across as quite sweet and a little bit toasted, but you can feel the sort of licoricey, aniseedy type flavours in this one. They come out a little bit further forward on the palate as well. For me, the vanilla that's in here really does take a little bit of a back seat. You can get the almonds, the nutty qualities in this beer, they come out a little bit further forward on the palate as well, and they sort of linger into the aftertaste a little bit. So, as I say, centre your palate, a nice little bit of that kind of brown, sugary, treacly molasses sort of thing. That'll be covering up the boozy part of the beer, but the chocolate and the brown sugars really sit on top of that roasty black malt and just smoothing it out. If you go to the front corners of your palate and move in a little bit, you'll start to get the kind of woody undertones that this beer has. And if you push further forward beyond that, go to the centre of your palate and just move forward a bit, you'll start to pick up the little bit of vanilla flavour that's in there. But as you just reach the part of your palate behind the kind of fruity front of your tongue, you start to get these kind of cakey notes out of the beer. And like I was saying, it really does remind me of Christmas pudding, and it really has a bit of a kind of roasted edge to it, if that makes sense. It's like a well-fired kind of Christmas pudding in some ways. I like the way the cakey flavours are sort of building a bridge between the malty side of the beer and the fruity side of the beer that comes from the hops. That's a really interesting point to make about this one, and the woody flavours just kind of sit underneath those kind of chewy, well-fired, cakey flavours actually. So yeah, as I say, go to the centre of your palate and move forward. You'll gradually start to pick up the vanilla, and then even further forward from that, that's when you start to get the nice kind of almond flavours out of this one. But like I say, the whole centre of your palate is just drying out as you go further and further into the aftertaste. With this one then, it starts to lean towards that roasty toasty black malt side of thing. I'd also say that the brown sugars they do start to get more and more kind of toasty the further that you drift into the aftertaste as well. So this beer's got a really, really interesting kind of transition to it actually. I like how this is going together. This one, you know, just judging by the flavour, it must have had a really long boil, and you know, you see the thickness and the colour of this. This has got to have been boiled for like 4-5 hours, something like that, because all what that does is it makes the sugars all kind of conglomerate and caramelise and things like that. So I mean, just looking at this beer, you can tell it's an absolute monster, and the colour of course is down to how well the sugars caramelise and things, as well as the type of malts. But yeah, that is a lovely beer, this one. I like how I really like how it all goes together. The malt base in this one, you know, you might expect from a brewery like this, who are well known for their IPAs, to make a very sweet Imperial Stout, but they've gone down a more kind of balanced route actually. This is one that has a nice little bit of roasty toastiness to it in the aftertaste. It starts off very sweet, but it's really a very well balanced one, and that's what I like about it. I like beers like this that make you think a little bit. So you know, kudos to Gamma Brewing Company on this one. They've built a really, really nice beer. I do find as well that the more I drink of this, the middle of my palate starts to sweeten up a little bit and become more like a sweet caramel rather than the kind of treacly, thicker molasses type flavours that are lingering in this beer. It does get a little bit more toasty, in fairness, as well. But the one that we've not mentioned yet are the licoricey and kind of aniseedy flavours. So if you focus on those brown sugars in the middle of your palate, you really do get a bit of this licoricey, aniseedy type flavour in the centre of your palate, and it lingers there. It's there. It's not quite there in the beginning, but the more and more, when you take more and more sips of this beer, you are going to see that flavour just start to push its way out a little bit more. So you've got the aniseed kind of coming off the top of the tongue, and that kind of slightly, is it right to describe aniseed as herbally? But you've got that kind of flavour coming out of the beer, and the middle of your palate's also drying out there. So this beer's got a lot of contrasts and a lot of things going on to it. It's got a good level of complexity, this. It's a while actually since I've had a stout that has been quite as complex as this. I think the last one that springs to mind was the Nightland from Dead End Brew Machine in Glasgow, and that was one of the best stouts I've ever reviewed on the channel. But this one is very, very solid as well, actually. If you like a big licoricey, aniseedy type Imperial stout, this one's going to tick the boxes for you. I really like that, actually. I'm surprised this one hasn't been exported to Sweden, come to think of it. I think the Swedes who love these big licoricey type beers, they would absolutely love this one, I think. So yeah, it does sweeten up, in fairness. When you drink more and more of it, I think it really does sweeten up a little bit. And the licoricey aniseed flavours, they do start to kind of tail off a little bit, but they're always there. I like that about this. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, that earthiness just kind of smoothens out a little bit. You get a wee touch of floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate, and as you go round the front curve of the tongue, you get that lighter kind of grassy element to the beer as well. I'm not sure exactly what hops they would have used in this one. I mean, I'm wondering, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of Bramling's Cross in this one, just going by the way the flavours come out, because it really does have some of that phenolic element to it, and some of the fruity notes that are in this really just I would just think that they are English hops rather than, you know, something like Williamette or Summit from America, which are popular in black IPAs, or Northern Brewer, which is popular in Doppelbock in Germany. I've got a feeling there is a bit of Bramling's Cross in this one, perhaps with another hop. You know, Simcoe actually works very well in black IPAs and stouts. It can give you some really nice red fruity flavours when you mix it with dark malts. I'd be curious to know what hops are in this one. It's a bit difficult to play guess the hops though, with the dark beers, as you can do a little bit more easily with the IPAs and stuff. But yeah, as I always say, the fruity esters come out of this beer in that little oily bubble behind the front curve of your tongue, and if you go to the back of that oily bubble, that's where you get these kind of cough syrupy, phenolic, medicinal type flavours there. A little bit, reminds me a wee bit of Cavonia, and as I say, Christmas pudding. It's got something like that going on there. But as you come further forward on the palate, they do mellow out a little bit. You start to get some kind of plummy notes out of the beer, and the front of the palate I think dries out a little bit as well. This beer really does get drier the further you go into the aftertaste, but at the same time it sweetens up. It's a bit of a kind of contrast, which is quite nice. But as you move further forward from that, you start to get a wee bit of a raisiny quality to the beer, also some juicy figgy notes, and the further you drift into the aftertaste, you start to get some kind of blackcurrant and blackberry type flavours out of this one. But I would say that the juicy figgy notes really linger there as well, actually. But yeah, I really like how this one goes together. I'm finding that the fruity notes, they do get a little bit more juicy the further you go into the flavour as well. It's not the oiliest beer actually in terms of the fruity flavours that I've had either. It's not the oiliest fruity Imperial stout that I've come across, but the slight juiciness that the beer has, it offers another good contrast to the sweetness in the malt base, and also the kind of dryness that develops too. But overall, a really quite nice beer, this one, and you know, big thumbs up to Gamma Brewing for this. It's quite different to the other Imperial stouts that I've had recently, but it really is very, very nice, and I wouldn't expect anything less of this brewery. These guys are very good at what they do. I'd love to see how they would do like a Scotch ale or a Doppelbock, or you know, something like that. It'd be interesting to see how they'd get on with like a Belgian style of beer as well, but they are mainly focused on the more American takes and classic styles, if you like. But this is awesome. Have a go at it if you get the chance. And it wasn't too expensive either. I think I only paid like, I must have only paid about 60 Danish crowns for this, something like that. So that would be what, 60, you know, we're talking about £7, something like that, so maybe about €8. So for a big 12% Imperial Stout, a big can of that, that's pretty good going, I have to say. So yeah, this beer really wasn't too expensive for what it is. In terms of the mouthfeel as well, that's the last thing we need to talk about. I'd say that this beer is pretty full-bodied. I don't think there's much debate on that. Big oily mouthfeel. Carbonation's very smooth in this. I wouldn't say this is the thickest Imperial Stout that I've come across, right enough. It does have a little bit of a kind of clean mouthfeel to it as well. It's quite thick and oily, but as I say, not the thickest, and the water in this one is obviously a pretty good quality. It has that sort of Nordic cleanliness to it, if you like. I like that about the Scandinavian beers. It's the same as the ones back home in Scotland, so it does have that kind of clean mouthfeel to it. The malt base has a really good balance between being sweet a little bit later on. It's got a little bit of dryness there, and you also get that kind of herbally, savoury almost type quality from the aniseed and the licorice flavours in there. So the malt base is where all the complexity is coming out in this beer. In terms of bitterness, this is difficult to sort of pinpoint, because you have got a bit of bitterness from the malt base, but you've also got some of it from the hops too. I don't think it's too high in terms of IBUs. I think maybe at most you're talking 40 or 50. But as I say, most of the dryness for me is coming in the centre of the palate rather than on the hoppy side of things. So I'm not sure if you should count that as IBUs. I think it could be about 50 IBUs in terms of if you're considering the dryness in the middle of the palate as well, potentially a little bit more, but if you're not, I don't think there's much hoppy bitterness out of this beer, so it could be a bit lower than that. So take that in mind. It's a little bit of a drier stout, but it's difficult to kind of distinguish between the dryness and the bitterness that you get in this this particular one. But on the hoppy side of things, you know, you do get a little bit of dryness from the earthiness and the floral notes there, and the fruity qualities in this beer. They're quite juicy, I think, the further you go into the aftertaste, but they start off a little bit more oily and phenolic and medicinal. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this beer. It's one that's made me kind of sit down and think, which I like having. I like having beers like that every so often. And you know, if any brewery's going to make you do that, then it's nice to have it from Gamma Brewing. These guys are doing some very, very interesting stuff. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. In terms of comparing this to other beers, if you like a stout that's got a little bit of a licoricey quality and gets a bit drier later on, this is one that's going to tick the boxes for you. At 12% ABV, you might expect it to be a little touch thicker than it is, but it really doesn't lack in flavour at all, so that would be an absolute nitpick to have a go at this beer for something like that. But it's a beautiful beer. As I say, Gamma Brewing are a very, very good brewery in my experience. So, you know, have a go at this one and just see what you think. I'd be very curious to see what these guys would do with like a Scotch ale or an Imperial Brown or a Belgian Quadruple or something like that. Mainly, they stick to brewing the IPAs, and every so often they'll put out a stout like this. I'm not sure if they're doing sours yet actually, but I'd love to see how these guys would do with a few different styles, because they're very good at what they have tried so far. And like I said, one of my favourite Danish breweries, and one that I'd highly recommend that you check out. So yeah, have a go at this beer, or have a go at any beer from Gamma Brewing Company, and I think you are in for a little bit of a treat. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one's a lovely Imperial Stout, big and complex. And it has a lot of stuff going on in it. So this one was the Feigned Fervor, an Imperial Stout at 12% ABV with almonds, vanilla and brown sugar added to the brew. Nearly forgot it there. From Gamma Brewing and Gorløse to the north of Copenhagen in Denmark. A lovely beer this, one of the more complex Imperial Stouts I've had in recent times, but with a few surprises added to it. So thumbs up to Gamma. Make sure you check out this brewery, and I will catch you guys very soon. Thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Gamma Brewing Company as well. We will return to these guys at some point soon, and I look forward to trying more from them as well. Check out this brewery, and I'll catch you later. Slàinte, skål, cheers.